This is hopefully a short video to show how you can set up a laptop on the lectern to use for Zoom so that you can host or operate Zoom from the chapel without an elaborate camera setup. The compromise is, of course, that you won't be able to see the congregation, or rather that other people on Zoom won't be able to see the congregation, and you will have to stay close to the laptop in order to be heard on Zoom. It's a bit of a let's cover everything, which means that for anybody who has any real familiarity, it's a bit teaching your grandmother to suck eggs, but then at least if everything's covered, there won't be any bits that are forgotten. We'll start with setting up the laptop on the lectern. Fairly obviously, the first thing to do is to put the laptop on the lectern. There is a white power lead which you should be able to find. Hopefully it is still close to the lectern where you can plug your laptop in. There is a grey lead with an RJ45 plug on the end. That's Ethernet, standard Ethernet, which you can put into your laptop so that you're hardwired for Ethernet, which is the best way to connect for Zoom, although you could merely use the church Wi-Fi. Then you may have trouble if there's contention on the Wi-Fi for any reason. There is also one end of a 10-meter HDMI cable, the other end of which you will need to use for the projector. So you need to plug in the Ethernet and the HDMI leads and plug into the mains if you're running your laptop off the mains. The other lead you'll need to plug in is a sound lead. The sound lead is the lead in the projector box with a 3.5mm jack on one end and two phono plugs plugged into jack adapters, so it looks like they're two 1/4-inch jack plugs on the other end, one red and one white. You also need to use that to get the DI box from the tray in the sound desk and to get the two spare cables from the bottom of the sound desks, the XLR cables. You plug the 3.5mm jack into the headphone output of the laptop, plug the two 1/4-inch jacks into the appropriate input sockets on the DI box. The output from the DI box is on the end, that's the XLR cables, which you take over to the stage box by the organ, and if you plug them into channels 7 and 8 there, that links you in to the channels on the sound desk which are labelled video. You may need to adjust the settings on your laptop. The display setting you need to have set to duplicate display. That's for a second monitor on the laptop screen. Go into system, go into display, sound, etc. And on display, right at the bottom, you need to set it as duplicate the screen. You need on the sound to have the setting that the sound is coming from the headphone output. You don't want the sound to be showing that it's going to the projector. And that's basically it for the laptop. The projector, obviously you put on the table, plug in the power lead. You'll need to make sure that the adapter is plugged into the socket on the wall so that will give the power effectively to both your laptop on the lectern and to the projector. And you plug in the other end of the HDMI lead from your laptop into the projector. I've tried to make sure that the other HDMI leads aren't so obvious. One was curled up behind the screen, which won't be on. the big monitor screen, which won't be on, but there are others around. If you're not getting an output properly, then you might want to check to make sure you've got the right HDMI at both ends. That basically is it. At the sound desk end, well, to provide sound into the chapel, you're going to use a microphone. If you're using the radio mic, you need to plug the radio mic into the mains, one of the extension leads on the desk, and into the mixer. Now, the easiest way to do that at present is to plug it in to the silver rack that's on the frame just the other side of the sound desk, just beside the sound desk, into number 1. That rack with 8 plugs in it is a microphone splitter, and it means that the inputs that come into it get fed into the equivalent numbers on the sound desk, but they're also separated, split into another cable so they can be fed into a different sound desk when we're using Zoom and cameras or streaming to YouTube, in order to give a completely separate mix. You won't be using that aspect. You're using the radio mic to speak into the chapel and the mic on your laptop to speak into Zoom. On the sound desk, make sure you've taken up the main channel input and the hearing loop input. Take up channels 7 and 8 on the desk. They're the ones labelled video, not the ones labelled Zoom. The ones labelled Zoom are 9 and 10, and they come out from different equipment, again, for when I'm operating with the camera and everything from the back. You also will obviously need to use the microphone channel. Channel 1 on the sound desk will need to be up for the radio mic to be working. If you're using either of the other 2 microphones, the stand microphones, they'll be plugged into 2 and 3 on the stage box, and they will operate on channels 2 and 3 on the sound desk exactly as normal, although they are in fact both going through the splitter. That's about it. It all ought to work. It did when I tried it. As you can see, we've got a picture of a 2-channel zoom up. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't actually host from the laptop on the lectern if you're taking the service yourself. That's particularly for Martin. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't host from there, because you know what you're doing with Zoom. But if you've got a different preacher, then you'd want to have the host computer set up elsewhere. Might just as well be set up at the back, on the back desk, and in which case you can use one or other of the Ethernet to plug into the computer you're using as host and sit there and operate. That is about it, excepting, yes, all the mains to turn everything on at the back is on the white plug that's in the 2-way socket down at the back by the fire extinguishers. When you've finished, turn off the mains on the white plug, but do leave the black plug switched on, because that is the switch. That plug is for the power supply for the router. And if you turn that one off, then you'll turn off all the Wi-Fi. I think that's about it now. Okay.